Good afternoon. I am Alise Isbell. I'm just going to take a second to share this screen and we will get started in 1, 2, 3. Welcome everybody. The presentation today is called Defining the ... Aligning Your Organization with Clarity. And so we're going to talk about several ways to do that. And so let's get started. The mark of punctuation called an ellipsis, we're all communicators and we all know this mark of punctuation, means that the next idea or the next sentence or the next concept is really open to the interpretation of the reader or the audience. And so that's sometimes a good thing. It leaves things up to the imagination and our own creativity, but sometimes the unknown can have negative consequences as well. And so, like I said, there are advantages to ambiguity and clarity. And ambiguity can be a realm of possibilities and potential and innovation. And we can do so much in that world of ambiguity. Things are fluid, there's a lot of change going on, a lot of flexibility, and that can be a good thing for organizations to in their creativity and trying to invent and all that. So ambiguity can be very positive. Clarity can also be very positive. Clarity promotes accountability. People know what they're supposed to do, and you can tell when things have been done or things haven't been done. Clear expectations. There's a structure around what we're trying to accomplish. Things are dependable, repeatable. Any type of production line depends on clarity so that you can produce the same thing every time and you can have quality control when you're in that type of environment. So a lot of advantages to ambiguity and clarity. So there are also some disadvantages to ambiguity and clarity. Sometimes things that are ambiguous can be too open to interpretation, too overwhelming, too many choices. We got thrust into this pandemic environment and reality. And a lot of things at first were very ambiguous and still are. Here we are in November and we're still trying to figure out a lot of things and what's going to happen next. And then clarity. There are some disadvantages to clarity too, because it can be taken too far. It can be too limiting, too controlling, too restrictive. And it won't promote creativity or fresh ideas or innovations or improvements because people are kind of stuck in that rigid and restrictive environment. It can cause people to become stagnant. All right, so in organizations, there is an opportunity for clarity. There are all kinds of aspects to organizations where clarity works really well. Processes. If we have a process that we go through and we do it the same or similar way each time, then we can get and expect a similar outcome each time. Employee benefits is another way that internal comms professionals work with employee benefits. And when they're clear, employees don't have a lot of questions, they make their choices and they can move on. Standard operating procedures is pretty obvious. And the word standard says it all. That process is standard, the procedure is standard, and so we're just going to keep repeating that in a way that is repeatable and dependable and predictable. Performance management, career progression, and reporting structure, those kind of all go together. And if people know what to do and how to do it, they're more likely to do it. If people know where their career is headed within an organization and that's clear, then they are more likely to stay because they can see somewhere to go. A reporting structure. A lot of organizations now go for that flat organization, that structure. Well, that sometimes creates a lot of ambiguity where people aren't really sure what they're supposed to, who makes the decision and where does the buck stop? And then, of course, safety. That is a huge opportunity for clarity. Because if things are clear, people know where to stand, people know where to sit, people know where to put gloves on and earplugs and all that, then they are more likely to remain in that safe and controlled environment. So there are advantages to that. And so the other thing we want to think about is, where is the ambiguity in our organizations? Where are people asking questions? Where are people looking for clarity? And that's the opportunity to clarify. When people are in a room and they're in a think tank and they're inventing and they're being innovative, that's great. They're asking good questions, but sometimes people are asking questions because things aren't clear. And so what is happening in your organizations? Look for situations where people are asking the same question every time. If you're getting a repeat of question after question, that's probably a signal that something needs to be clarified. And so we want to look for that. Where is the ambiguity? Where are people asking questions? And so here are some other things that happen. When there's too much ambiguity, people get frustrated. They don't know what to do. And then people overcompensate. For example, they lean heavily on rules just for the rules' sake, not because that makes things better. They overdo it in terms of the paperwork, because when people don't know what to do, they try desperately to put boundaries around whatever that situation is, and paperwork is one way to do that. So look for situations where people are just doing paperwork for no real reason. It's just, oh, I have to fill out this TPS report. It's got to be done because that's the way it has to be done. There might be low morale and lack of motivation. There was a behavioral study, very popular study done years ago with children, where they were put in a room, the boundaries weren't clear, so they all kind of huddled in the middle and they didn't really do anything. And then they put a boundary, a fence or some type of structure around the children, and you could see the children just spread out to the boundary and look around in the whole space versus just in that tiny little one area. They had a safety in numbers. Well, that's the same thing that happens in organizations when there's too much ambiguity. People kind of cluster together in safety and they may not produce as much. They don't go exploring because we're not really sure where the boundaries are. We're not really sure what's okay, what's not okay. So we're just going to stay right here in our safety zone, right here in our safe spot. And that causes a decline in productivity. So sometimes there's too much clarity. And when we have a lot of structure, a lot of rigidity, a lot of rules and things like that, we can see it a lot in manufacturing environments and distribution centers and things like that. People can sometimes rebel and sabotage. They don't feel a sense of creativity. They might do repetitive work. And so, they're not able to put their spin on things. They're not able to be themselves and kind of let their creativity go. And so they do passive aggressive things maybe to sabotage it. And especially if things have gone too far, like you have too much paperwork, too many processes, too many things that keep people into limits, they're going to push those limits. They're going to defy, they might test them. And, there's been a research study as well about work environments and where people don't feel like they are listened to or that they have any ability to be creative. They use the public spaces in their work environment as their rebellious way of expressing themselves. So they might have an employee lounge or cafeteria, and they might leave it messy because that's the place where they have control. You know, they don't have control on the shop floor, but they get into the employee lounge and they just leave things everywhere just because they want to, you know, have their own space and have, you know, those limits lifted and be themselves. So we can have some negative behaviors if there's too much clarity, too much rigidity and limitation. So how do we start communicating in clarity and with clarity? First of all, we want to recognize the difference between abstract and concrete. And y'all are all communications professionals, but this is a good reminder, because if we are very experienced, we tend to get into habits and we tend to forget the basics about abstract and concrete. And there are a lot of concepts that get thrown around in organizations that mean different things to different people. For example, respect. Respect means different things to different people. Sometimes respect means that you make eye contact, or that you're not on your phone while somebody's trying to talk. You're paying attention. You're facing the person. But sometimes respect means you do what I say, or I'm going to punch your lights out. And so in organizations, we want to write about and describe these abstract concepts in ways that are concrete and observable. And what I mean by observable is that they impact the 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. And so those 5 senses, people can see them, hear them, touch them, taste them, smell them, etc. Most of the time in organizations, it's just going to be sight and hearing. But medical professionals and maybe restaurant, food services might have touch, taste, and smell components in them as well. So respect, abstract concept, and what we want to do as communication professionals is to describe things in concrete ways. Eye contact, you can see somebody doing. Not being on the phone, you can see somebody doing. Paying attention, same thing. You can see somebody paying attention or not paying attention. Same with communication skills. Now, I, as a communications professional and a consultant, I hear people talk about how this so-and-so has communication problems. And my next question is, okay, specifically, what do you mean when you say that? And so they might describe, well, you know, they don't get back to me soon enough, and they're rude, or they're abrupt, and so, you know, we want to define what that means. Same with leadership, same with integrity. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with nouns. So if we find ourselves using lots of pronouns, we want to be converting those back into nouns. Same with regular nouns. For example, we don't want to use they, it, he, and she. We want to define who those people are so we know who is doing what. Same with nouns. Nouns like the company, that's a perfectly good word, but it's not as specific as a proper noun like Smith Incorporated. And so be aware of that. Let's raise our awareness about the difference between abstract and concrete. The other way we can promote clarity in our organizations is by incorporating significance. Instead of just making statements of fact, we want to further describe the situation and explain the importance of it. For example, the pipe was red. That's a perfectly good statement, but there's a lot of question that comes after it. Is it red because it's painted? Is it red because it's hot? Is it dangerous? Is this a safety issue? Is this going to kill me? You know, and so we not only want to make statements as communicators, but we want to explain the significance of those statements. Otherwise, number 2 happens. David moved to another team. Well, there's a big story behind that. And we're communicators, we're the storytellers. We need to explain which team, why that happened. Otherwise, what do you think happens? They start making up the story. They start talking about maybe why David moved to the other team and this is a bad thing and what do we do? They'll make up the ... They'll fill in that ellipsis with a story of their own. Third one, many people want to change the process. Number 3 is full of vague words. Many. What process? Which people? And so we want to define not only the statement, but what is the importance of it, instead of just merely recounting events and in that journalistic style. And journalistic style is good for what it is, but journalistic style reports facts. And in internal comms and PR, we know almost always there's more to the story. So begin to incorporate significance. Another thing to be aware of regarding clarity is mixed messages. And a mixed message can occur with all the different aspects of our communication: voice, words, body language, facial expression, general appearance, our clothes, our accessories. Those all say something. They all communicate. And color and all of those things work together. Also, some things to think about are location, time, day, holidays, other simultaneous events. We want to be clear that we're not sending a mixed message to our audience. For example, I was a member of a professional organization and they scheduled a conference, an expo, on a Jewish high holiday. Well, there were a number of people in that organization who weren't able to attend. And that was an easy fix. You know, all they had to do was do a little bit of background and communication to realize that, you know, that was the schedule and put it on a different week and it would have been great. Instead, they didn't get input, didn't really think through all the possibilities, and they ended up disenfranchising a large amount of participants in that conference. So what are some examples of mixed messages? We've all seen them. And we've all seen them in the news and newscasters. We've seen them in reporters on the scene. We've seen them in politicians. We've seen them in, you know, CEOs who weren't prepared appropriately for their soundbite or their PR slot. And, you know, these are just some examples of that. Sarcasm we hear sometimes, and it just doesn't go over well because it's automatically a mixed message, you know, smiling or laughing during something that's actually really tragic. You know, sitting there saying, I'm so excited, and you have this blank face and expressionless. We want to be really careful about that and make sure that we're not sending a mixed message. And when we do that, or when we put ourselves together for an event, then we want to get input from someone else. You know, what does this look like? Am I sending the right message with this outfit? Am I sending the right message with, you know, my jewelry, my hand placement, you know, all the different things that involve that. Practice, get input from other people. So here's an example of a transformation in clarity. And you can read it for yourself, but I'm going to read the first couple of lines. And while I do, see if you can pick out the vague words. Here goes. A major company maintains a large personnel database that it basically makes use of for many kinds of employee-related applications, such as payroll and benefits. The company now has some plans to extend the database significantly to include current photographs of employees and use the photographs as the basis for a very modern security system. So what are some of the vague words you noticed? Major, basically, large, really large, how large? Some plans, Significantly. Well, how significantly? And very modern security system. What does that even mean? And so there are a lot of words being used in that first example, but a lot of them are vague. And so version 2 kind of cleans that up and tightens that up with some very specific words. And it says Smith Incorporated instead of company will expand its personnel database to include employee photographs. The company wants to use facial recognition. And now that's facial recognition instead of very modern security system to protect outside doors from unauthorized access. So outside doors, very specific. We all know what those outside doors are. And then unauthorized access, that's pretty plain. We know if somebody's supposed to be there versus not there, supposed to be there. And so that's just an example of how we can transform a written message into something that's more clear. So here are some concrete ways that you can do that as well. Excuse me, the first way is giving examples. Giving examples is the basics for supporting statements. And here in this table, you can see are a bunch of lead-in phrases that we can use and choose from in order to give examples. Give examples, when we do that, we're proving, we're supporting, we're reinforcing, just like this brick wall or the stone wall in the picture. We can see giving examples shores up and strengthens our statements, because they're not just statements. Statements can somehow turn into opinions. And when we support them with concrete examples, then we take away that opinionated feel. And these are just some ways. Here's an example of what that looks like. Elmer shows respect for his coworkers. Here's the first one. For example, what does he do? He listens without interrupting. Remember those concrete behaviors? Can you see, hear, touch, smell, etc.? Those 5 senses, we can see him doing that and we can hear him doing that. Another example, another lead-in phrase, he gives people undivided attention. We can see him doing that. To be specific, he doesn't look at his phone in meetings. We can see, again, him doing that. There are 3 supporting examples that demonstrate that Elmer is showing respect. There you go. So that's the first way that we can continue to write in clear statements. The other thing that we can do is use data to clarify. And data is great, but remember that data is nothing unless you explain its significance. So these lead-in phrases, again, are useful. We can pick and choose whichever ones work for us. But the key is to use significance when you're talking about a number. Otherwise, it's just a number. And here's some examples. Sally is a hard worker. Based on long hours and detailed report, her new sign tracker has helped us keep track of printed materials and saved us 10% on signage costs this year. So you've got a year, you've got a 10%, and then you could compare that back to last year, or you can compare that forward to next year. JJ's salary hinges on whether he sacks 15 people, as evidenced in the games. So you can see and measure whether he sacked 15 people or not. Did he sack 14? That's below expectations. Did he sack 18? That's above expectations. And then he's going to get his pay raise and his bonus based on whether he is above or below that measure. Employee X met his sales goal of 15 suites in the first 3 games. 15 suites. We can count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., up to 15. And so data is good. Data works, but only when we explain the significance. 15 suites is not important until we tie it back to this person's sales goal. 15 people that he sacks is not important until we hinge it to his salary. And evidence. 10% is not important until we can compare it to last year and this year and next year. So that's data. So another way to enhance clarity and use evidence is by a concept called chaining. And chaining works exactly what it sounds like. In this example, you can see it. We write a sentence and we end the sentence with one concept, and we begin the next sentence with the same concept. And you can see it. John is an excellent communicator. He communicates difficult situations face to face, then follows up with an email recap. Now we've got our next link. These recaps lead toward action steps. And the sentence with action steps start the next sentence with action steps. And the last sentence in a chaining paragraph is going to tie all of those pieces of evidence back to a main idea. It can be a core value, like this example. Completing action steps ties directly to one of our core values, focus on solutions. It can be a core value, like I said. It can be a mission statement. It can be a competency in a performance management process. It can be vision, any type of value, and bottom line result can be the tie-in or the summary statement that is used in that last final sentence. So let's look at another couple of examples as we finish up. Nathan is an exceptional recruiter, end of sentence. Next sentence starts with recruiting. And so you're linking, just like a chain, those concepts. Recruiting is important to our business to feed the pipeline of clients, end of sentence. Next sentence starts with clients. And you're point by sentence, linking these ideas and evidence to, in this paragraph, goals, meeting our income goals. Nathan's goal impacts our income goals. And so that last sentence ties together Nathan's behavior to a bottom line result, a goal, a competency. Anything that is a result that the company or organization wants to work toward. Mary, in this second example, is the same way. You know, her role as an executive assistant is to provide excellent administrative support. End of sentence. Next sentence, administrative support consists of coming up with innovative ways to streamline processes. A recent example, there's your example of a streamlined process, was doing et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this helps her boss when his meetings start. So this is tied to a core value of their meetings and efficiency. And so chaining is yet another example of how we can use evidence to tie back to a bottom line result. So in summary, what have we talked about today? Ambiguity can be good or bad. Clarity can be good or bad. And there are opportunities and reasons for clarity in organizations. There are reasons for putting structure around things in organizations, and there are more of them than ambiguity. Ambiguity has a place, but not as big of a place as clarity. You know, you can set up opportunities for ambiguity where people can explore and expand and create, but you want to say that up front, that this is a safe space and an opportunity to explore and to innovate. Concrete language, using examples, data and chaining techniques, strengthen and clarify messages. That's what we're talking about today. How do we do that? We use examples, data, and that other last technique we talked about, which is chaining. Well, I hope that you've gained a lot from this short session, and I will be available for questions and answers and review expectations in the next few minutes. Thanks for being here, and see you soon.